do want to talk about your story, and I want to talk about your work out toward health and some of the things you guys offer. We can even get into the last the toward study that just got released not too long ago. But man, I'm hearing your story and knowing your story and thinking about like man, traumatic events that happen in all of our lives. It's tough because it's so relative. You could hear somebody's traumatic story of like growing up in a gang in LA or something, and yeah, that doesn't compare to the type of trauma I grew up in. Mormon culture here in Salt Lake City, Utah. But we all experience them, and it's all relative, right? And so it's hard to compare. And when I hear your story about growing up and all the things that happened to you, man, that's pretty heavy stuff. Not that easy to deal with for sure.
Right, yeah, definitely the 70s and 80s were a different time, so there wasn't a lot of filters for the fat kid in school, you know.
Yeah, totally. Well, I don't know where you want to start this story, but how did that all evolve for you?
Yeah, so I would say my weight started to become an issue when I was in second grade. I know that's kind of when things blew up, and I think a lot of that had to do with up until that point, my parents, the family ate mostly home cooked meals and things like that, and McDonald's, pizza, going out to eat, stuff like that. That was kind of maybe a once a month thing, a rare occasion. But I think that what contributed that summer, like kind of with the weight blowing up, and then afterward is, mom started working and dad was putting in, long hours. So I was left with a setter who didn't cook, and so all those home cooked meals and all that stability kind of got upended and came in the processed foods, all the quick things like the cereal, snack cakes, ice cream, microwave stuff. All that was kind of what was replaced in the fridge and the cupboards. And just speaking one of those moments, I think the reason I realized that I had a weight issue at that point is honestly I didn't know at that time. And I remember one day right before school started, I was in the back seat of my dad's car, and we had stopped at a family friend's house, and I was pretending to be asleep because I didn't want to get out of the car and mess with the adults and stuff. So anyway, I remember my dad's friend came up to the window and was looked in the I could tell he looked in the back seat because he had told my dad, he said, "Wow, Brian's got fatter than a pig. What are you guys feeding him?" And I remember that just kind of sticking with me. And I remember thinking, man, school's starting in 2 weeks, and like there's no way I'm gonna, lose weight in 2 weeks and be normal. And I started kind of started panicking right there because like I told you before, I knew what was waiting for me. As soon as I got to school, it was going to be kind of day in, day out, teased, made fun of, bullied, all that kind of stuff. And
Brutal.
unfortunately, that's kind of exactly how it was. And fortunately, neighborhood I grew up in and the schools we went to, even the people that are supposed to protect you, like the teachers, the principals, they were in on it too. Like you were fair game. There was really no escape for anybody. But I said this kind of continued through intermediate school, and by the time I was in eighth grade, I was completely in a cycle where I just started eating and stayed in the house most of the time, and just tried to avoid people. And I'd say out of everything I dealt with, I'm trying to throw more crazy stories, but that moment in eighth grade, it kind of came to a peak where I was in the lunchroom line waiting for my food, and um the crowd, like the kids were really rowdy that day, and the principal was all worked up, and he walked around with a megaphone and he would just scream at kids all day. So he got really upset that day, um because everybody was being rowdy, and I had just got my food, and he told everybody to sit down, shut up, but I didn't have nowhere to sit. I don't know what was going on that day, but couldn't find a seat. And I remember he just started screaming like, I remember one time he said, "Hey, fat ass, go find a seat, sit down. I told you to sit down." And then he just started calling me moose and making moose sounds. So of course, you know what happened. Casey with kids like that. Like that was my nickname the rest of the year after that. But you know the but luckily ninth grade, um, hormones hit. I hit a growth spurt, and I was that was the first time in my life that my weight had stabilized and normal. But honestly, I tell people this all the time. I was heavy for so long and had made got made fun of for so long that I was almost 2 years into a normal weight before I realized I wasn't, overweight anymore. And when I heard other kids getting teased or whatever, I just kind of assumed they were talking to me. That's kind of how bad it was back then. But
Oh,
yeah, luckily I had that little brief period. And yeah, so fast forward through high school. Um, I had my first daughter immediately at the end of high school. So, life started right then and there after high school. I got a sedentary job. Now I've got work stress, life stress, new baby, and my weight. So my eating habits didn't change. So everything kind of packed up on me. And like I said, it came on pretty quick, pretty heavy. And I'd say by the time I was 23, I was already kind of like over the 225 mark, probably even more. I kind of stopped weighing in at that point. Um, and so just to fast forward, I think I tried between 20 and 30, I tried all that mainstream stuff. I tried to do Weight Watchers, calorie counting, Nutrisystem, all the mainstream things. Nothing was working out for me. I'd maybe lose 5, 10 pounds and I'd fall off. I'd gain that 5, 10 pounds back and throw another 10, 20 on top of it. And so that kind of went on till age 30. And I don't know about you, Casey. When I hit 30, something clicked. Something about the number 30. I was like, I got to get in shape. Like, I got to start taking care of myself. And so I decided, okay, it's time for me to get serious about my health, lose this weight. And by this time I had both my daughters were really young, and I knew I was getting older. I didn't know my family history. And so anyway, I started eating better, just trying to do the calories in, calories out, eating more vegetables, things like that. I joined the Y, worked out 3 times a week. And honestly, I'm going to fast forward again. I did that for 5 years. I was pretty consistent with my meals and working out and everything. And I had at this time I was into plumbing, so my job was pretty active. And honestly, I think that's what kept my weight from probably going in the 300 plus mark, is because I was so active. But also I got to back up a little bit. I did get me a doctor at age 32. Started going to my annual checkups, all that kind of stuff. And from age 30 to 35, each year I went to my doctor's, I was a little bit heavier. My blood work was a little bit worse, to the point where kind of when I hit that point where it all came together for me. I was 35, been going to my doctor's 5 years, and I was exhausted. And I was mentally, physically, emotionally, wasn't keeping up with my kids. I had no energy to do anything, and every day was a struggle. And I remember that doctor's appointment. I walk in there. That's when I hit the peak of 265. Worst, felt the worst I'd ever felt. And that was the first time my doctor came in. She's saying, "Hey, Brian, we don't know your family history, and your blood work just came back. You're pre-diabetic, blood pressure's high, cholesterol's high." And she was like, "What? Every year you come here, you're in worse shape than the year before." And she's like, "I think we need to start considering medications for all these things. Just get in front of this problem." And when she told me that, it truly scared me. And in my mind, I said to myself, these are all meds my grandparents are on, and I'm only 35 years old, and I'm already like feeling like crap. So I was like, I felt like I was running out of time. I didn't know how much quality of life I had at that point. But it did kind of scare me, and it woke me up, and I said, Doc, give me one more year. If I come back here next year and I'm on the same path, everything's going like it is now, I'll take your meds, I'll do your advice, I'll do whatever you say at that point. But I was like, just give me a chance to get in front of this thing. And I remember going home not with no plan. I just knew I had to do something. And I remember thinking, my wife is a nurse practitioner, and I thought, oh man, I got to go home and tell my wife. But I just told my doctor I'm not going to take medication for all these issues I got. But luckily, my wife was really understanding, and she was struggling with her weight at the time as well. And she had already planned about a month later that she was going to start a low carb diet. And I said, look, I'll do it with you. I've never done this before. I've never really heard of it. And we'll do it together. And because I was desperate, I wanted to do something. And, that January we started, and the weight came off kind of quick at like the first month. So weight came off, my energy levels went up. I was feeling real good, and um, I just kept sticking with it. And by I think it was about 9 months later, I had my follow up with my doctor, and I was down at that time. I was down about 70 pounds,